Please confirm my audio.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so this is what we have done so far. So if you look at our previous activities, it shows that we are still under data preparation for predictive analysis. And we have started looking at various techniques which are used in machine learning to restructure our data. So where we have discussed the two most used method for reshaping our data, such as the dot group by and the dot pivot. And then just to recap through it again, started the journey of reshaping our data here. Here we talk about row granularity. And if you can still recall, I said this term, row granularity in data science, it's actually used to describe the process of reducing the height of your data and increasing the width of your data, which is considered to be the most perfect data shape that should be passed into your predictive analytics model, which will be considered later in the class under supervised learning. But the aspect we are dealing with right now is unsupervised learning, which I said it involves you deploying different algorithms, deploying different techniques to get your data prepared to be passed into such a predictive analytics model. So here I highlighted some details about this whole exercise where I said row granularity is one of the process that is involved in machine learning that helps us with the help of some functions or techniques to reshape our data using the group by function to combine all record with the same ID column into a single row using the dot pivots to transform data from a long format data to a wide format data. So that is actually what our row granularity is all about, transforming data from long format, talking about the height, into wide formats. And here we call in a data set which is already saved as DFV or DF, which is already saved as DF. Now, all right, so this is our data set or data frame, which is named as DF. What we did here is that we called it out, and this is the data structure. Now here, this is where we apply the reshaping, data reshaping using group by. So what we actually did here is that we are trying to reduce the length, the height of this particular data frame such that each customer will have a unique row. For example, you can see area having 3 different rows. So it is a unique ID. So there's no point of duplicating their records. So we can actually use one row to represent all the records from area. That is what we are simply doing as row granularity. So here you can also see code here having 2 rows. So we can also collapse this to what? One row that will end up reducing the long or the width, the height of this particular data, and so on like that. That is the technique we are learning. Now here we have achieved what exactly we want to achieve using the .group by. So what we did here is that we summarize the total numbers of songs each of the customer or each of the unique ID listen to in using a customer header criteria. That is what you did here. At the end of it, your output is that area listened to 99 songs, chord listen to 51 songs. How do you know? You come back to the raw data where it has not been granularized. You will see that here, this is area 50. This is another area 48. This is another area 1. So if you add these three values, that will give you the 99. So that is exactly what happened here. We use the sum function to add all the number of songs each of the customer listen to. Hope you are with me. Are you still here? Let me get a response.
I'm with you.
All right. So now here, what we did is to make your code more readable by, displaying it in a vertical format where we introduce these brackets. Whenever you want to display your code in a vertical format instead of horizontal like this, all you need is just to envelope the whole of the code inside the parentheses brackets, so that will allow you to be breaking it accordingly. That's what we did here. Now here we added a .reset underscore index. So it's a Python functions that help us to generate an ID, that is serial number for our output. So if you check here now, there's no serial number. As a result of that, this particular value does not have a descriptive header, just like the way you have customer describing all this. We don't have song describing this. That is one thing we are able to achieve when we added the .reset underscore index. We are able to generate or display the header for the value. Now, finally, we save our transform version. The transform version, we saved it in a different data frame so that we can access it differently from the raw data, which I said should be your custom as a data scientist. Whenever you are perfecting your data, once you get to the final copy, always learn to save it in a different variable so that you can differentiate the unprocessed and the processed version. So that is what we did here. So we took the whole of the perfected copy and save it inside customer underscore song. Now we have it as a valid data frame. Now we have the row granularity using pivot, the same concept. And then here I explained that using pivots, the syntax is different from using group by. Okay. Now the group by, we were trying to group them and also summarize their number of what reoccurrence. But in the case of pivot, this is the data set name. This is the function. You have to specify the header that will be used as the criteria for granularity for the granularity. So what we did here is because the concept is still the same, we are trying to reduce the height of the data and end up increasing the width of the data. So if that is the same concept, to achieve it using pivot as another technique, which is very much used out there in machine learning to achieve that purpose, you have to use index to call out the particular column that will be used as the criteria for reshaping the data, and also use the columns attribute to call out the numbers of headers that will determine the granularity. So in this case, you selected customer as the index, which means what is the basis, is the first one, under which you are going to look at the values under column as songs, as different types of songs. Then look at the values under value as the number of times they listen to those songs. So that is why we picked this header. Now, this is what we got. Now, we observe that there are missing values. After running this, we have NaN, which in data science translates to what? Missing value, which means there are cells that are missing, that does not have values. So based on that observation, we are trying to resolve something. We say that we observe that there are missing values. Therefore, to replace them, use the dot fill now. Use the dot fill now. So the dot fill now is one of the common Python function which we use even when we were learning data analysis with Python. So it's actually used to replace a value in your data set. It can replace both number as data type. It can also replace a string, that is text-based word data type, within your data set, depending on how you pass it into the data set. But in this case, we are passing a number. That is why it's not quoted inside the fill now brackets or the input. So this is what we got. At this point, we have been able to convert all the places where we have NaN indicated toward 0. So in this format is more perfected for analysis. Now here we added also the index, so that we can display, because we are having that same issue of displaying the headers properly. So we supply the index and we are able to what? To present the data in a more readable format. Then here, therefore, to save the organized pivot data in a valid data frame. Okay, so this is what we did here. Then here, this is where the assignment commenced. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go through the assignment myself as solution. Then you will now compare it with your own, because what you did here is a kind of shallow. So I have to be on the same page with you on the assignment. So I will just quickly look at the assignment solution. It's part of the class actually, because you are going to learn one or two things from it. So every assignment I give to you, I will be taking it as solution in the class, so that you can learn my own techniques on how to resolve it. So what was the assignment? The assignment is from Mr. Prosper, a lead data scientist. So this is just like me picturing it as if you are working, an organization has employed you, where your principal is instructing you as a data scientist. Okay, so that is why I have to put it in this format, so that you know that this is how our task will be given to you when you are employed tomorrow. So from Mr. Prosper, a lead data scientist, subjects, please format data for analysis. So this is how the assignment will always be given to you. Hi, I hear you. So this is supposed to be this typographical error. I hear you are the new associate data scientist on the team. Welcome. We are currently working on, so this is supposed to also be, we are currently working on a project to segment students based on their entertainment preference. So there is a data set that comprises students. Okay, so we are trying to segment them, which falls under the row granularity. Remember, we said that what the unsupervised machine learning focuses on segmenting data, clustering data into different category. And we are going to be achieving this based on their behavior. So that is what we are saying here. So based on the criteria for segmenting them is the entertainment preference. How the one that have love for a particular song. So that is going to be a criteria for segmenting them, because there must be a criteria as the key behavior that helps you to know whether this set of students should be clustered in one group or in another group, because they have some familiar attitude or familiar attributes. So could you format the data in this spreadsheet? So which means that it is going to be an Excel data set, so that it is at the correct row granularity for the correct row granularity for student level analysis. So what are the key assignments so that you know what you are to target? One, read the Excel file into a pandas data frame. That is going to be your first assignment. Read the Excel file into a pandas data frame. Check the number of rows and columns. Determine the row granularity needed. Apply the correct data frame transform or transformation. Let me make it here. Transformation. Save the transform copy as a new data frame. So this is just a way of mandating you to go through what we have done so far before we step into the next topic. Check the number of rows and columns. Now, hints, so that you know what the data set you are about to call in has about 600 records. At the end of it, you must have reduced the width, the height, from that 600 to 150 rows. So we are going to find out. So this will be a kind of a guideline that will be info whether we are on the right path. So let me quickly answer the assignment as a solution. Now, you press, let me insert a new. All right, so now I want to show us a technique that you can use. Now, let's say you want to add, because we need to add 3 to 4. We need to add 3 to 4 extra cell. So for us to add that, using a technique you should know, just select, after adding the first one, just select this and tap letter B on your keyboard, letter B on your keyboard, letter B on your keyboard. That is how you duplicate cells automatically without you coming to be clicking on this. So now, why I added this is that I'm going to be using them to answer each of these questions. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'll say assignment solution. So I'll simply say assignment solution. So of course, I will mark down this to be a test as a header. Remember, there is another way you can mark down if you don't want to use the escape and the pressing of M and then shift and enter. So while you are here, you can just come here and select mark down. So that M you were pressing actually represents mark down. Then you can now simply do shift and enter 2 times and then to make it a plain heading. So always follow this format so that at any given time you revisit your notebook, you'll be able to know at which point one particular topic ends and at which point another topic begins. So you need to also do that. So now the next thing I want to do here is to answer that first question. So to answer the first question, I will just copy the whole of it here, Control C. I'll bring it to this cell. Now I will answer it here. That question said that we should read an Excel data file into Pandas. Now that Excel data file is in the data folder that I must have given to you. So if I go back to my directory now to check my analytics, my project folder, you see it here under what? Data. You have it here. So this is actually the entertain, the one with the one in Excel format. So this is the one we are to read. That is what the question says. So now that I have idea of the name, so I can go back to my analysis sheet. Remember that before you can read Excel data file, you must have imported your library, such as what? Pandas and the NumPy, if possible, particularly Pandas. But let me check. Definitely we have imported Pandas before. We have it here. So since we have it here, and the data is not that large, it's just 600. So even if you don't bring in NumPy, which enhances Python to exploit large data structure, it will still work because the data is not up to a billion. So that is why at times when you are loading all this light data, you might do away with NumPy because NumPy support loading large data set. So now I am going to start by giving it a name. So let me use that name, entertain. Let me use entertainment as the name of the data frame that will be holding the value I'll be calling from that now. So of course, I'll say pd dot read underscore, I'm loading Excel file, so I will say Excel and then add your function bracket because the name of the file is string, so we have to quote it. So I'll come here and take this file. So right click on it and copy the parts of that file. Go back to your notebook and then paste it. Now to avoid directory issue, like I told us, I can simply just remove this because this is you trying to use how do I call it? Absolute, where you are trying to acknowledge all the directories that are involved before you get to where your data is. But I want to convert it to relative, which means that I don't have to reference all the storages that are lined up before I get to where the data is. So I will just say, okay, 2 dots, which we have learned in our data analysis class. So if I run it, I should be able to have my data. If I don't, I troubleshoot. So let's see, perfect. So the data is here. So now I want to show you a technique again, because as we are advancing, there are different techniques I will be introducing because this is data science class, not data analysis class. This is data science. So all the techniques that are involved, you are going to be getting them. Now, you know that from data analysis class with Python, whenever we want to output the value stored in a variable, we usually retype this. If the word is long, that is considered to be a wasting of time. So what you do is that since it's a register variable in Python memory, particularly in this notebook, all you have to do is to type en. Just type at least 2 letters that start that particular variable or word you want to call. Once you have typed the first 2 letters, there is a tab button on your keyboard, Tab. Just press it twice. It will output all the variables that you have stored in this notebook that probably have those 2 letters you type. Then from there, you can click on the one. At this moment, it happened to be we have just one word we have used as variable that starts with en. So I will just click on it. So that saves me from typing the whole of this full. So if I run it, I have the entire data here. So like I told you, if you do your dot shape on this data, To know how many values are there, you can see that what en, or let me just add this to it, dot shape as part of what we have done. So that will output the total numbers of records in that data set. We have 600 of them, and we have just 3 columns. That is what this is simply interpreting. I hope you are still with me.
Yes, I'm with you.
All right. So now I don't have to find out how many headers because there are just 3. Now, supposing I want to also know how many headers are in this data set. So I want to call them out, which is necessary as a way of inspecting our data set. I've taught us that before. Whenever you load in a new data set, always run this Python attribute to inspect it, for you to have a detailed understanding on that particular what data you are about to work with. Because that will aid your, that will have a way of aiding your question drafting, to make your questions to align with the insights you intend to derive, understanding the data. So if I simply do columns, that will call out what are the headers. So you can see that what we have, what name, we have entertainment, and then we have hour per what week. That is why the first one, the shape, told us that there are only what 3 header there, for what you just confirmed now. So you have just answered the first question that say read the Excel file into a pandas data frame. Now let's quickly go to the second question. The second question says, let me copy it and add it to the added cell. So I'm adding it here. So this is where I'm answering the second question. Second question says, check the numbers of rows and columns. Check the numbers of rows and columns. So to check the number of rows and columns, your syntax is very simple. It's what I've done, Seth. I've even done it in that first one, but let me just do it here properly. So what you did here now, this dot shape is what's supposed to come here. So this is where you are supposed to perform it. So let me perform that stuff again. En, double tap. So you can see that now it's listing so many items. So I'll pick the one I want, and then dot shape. So this is a Python attribute we use in checking for the number of what. So with this, I have that information that there are what 600, because one of the part of the question says that as hit. Remember that at the end of your row granularity, this 600 that you are saying should have been reduced to what 150. That is the whole essence of these techniques we are learning. If we are given data set as data scientists, how do we reduce the height and increase what the width, which is the best prescribed format for passing into data predictive analysis model, which we are going to learn under supervised learning. Now, we have answered that question. So the next question, let me quickly go there. The next question says, determine, the next question says, this is supposed to be number 3. So let me add my comment. Determine the what? Determine the granularity. Determine the granularity needed for this. That is the third question. So how are we going to solve this? I want you to pay good attention here. We are a bit going into the advanced part of this, because I'm not sure you did this. I'm not sure you did it because what you sent to me does not have all these details. That is why I usually give the assignment to students ahead, so that when I come to the class, I will go through it myself to correct your mistakes. So now determine the row granularity needed. So before we do that, let's even find out whether there is need for granularity. Are there value with the same ID repeated? So we are going to find out. So let me start by running this code. So the first question you should always ask yourself before you embark on this one is, are there values or record repeated that you want to convert to single row? Is the first question. So for me to answer this, I will just focus on one of the name that I have in the data set. I will call one of the name twice, or I will call out one of the name. If the name output more than one record, that confirms that what? The data need what? Granularity. So for example, let me call that entertain now, double tap. Let me call that entertain now. Let me just focus on one name. For now, I'm focusing on what? Emily. So I want to know whether there are places where Emily is repeated in this data set. Once it output more than one Emily, it shows that the data require what? Row granularity. So what I'm going to do here now is for me to simply confirm this. So what I'm doing here to check for repeated entries. To check for repeated entries. So I'm deploying this syntax. So I will simply call the name of the data set in which I want to check if Emily were entered in more than one row. So the same thing, at some points, once you have run that double tap to display the name of the variable, at some point, it will now reduce to what? Just pressing tab once. It will display the name of your variable. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say that what? From this data, select. Remember, I told us that the square bracket denotes picking, retrieving, selecting certain value from an entire data frame based on the condition supplied. Now, what the syntax is simply saying that from this data, select entertain, because you are trying to select the whole bucket, and then you are saying, okay, because you want to attach a function or a technique to it. So you say from the whole data, I'll press the tab 2 times again to display it for me. From the whole data, select, you concatenate name, the way it is typed there, whether it is capital letter or not. Let's check. Okay, it's lowercase. Name, because you are using the criteria you want to use to check whether there is need for granularity, is the name. And the name happened to be Emily. So what we are going to do, you say what? Name equals to, remember I've taught you what that equals to mean. And then the name is a string. I have already copied it before. I will just paste it. So if I run this code now, it's supposed to display all the records that are equals to Emily. So what we are actually checking here is that if it output more than one, it means that what? There is need for row granularity. So let me run it. So you can see that what? It outputted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 places where Emily record will enter. So there is need for us to what? To represent the whole of this with one row. And by the time we do that, we must have reduced the record from. We must have reduced the record from that 600 to 150. We must have reduced the record from that 600 to the 150. So there are other names. This Ava might also have places where it's also repeated. Jacob can also have places. So by the time we collapse all of them to one row, then that is how you are going to achieve the granularity targeted. So this is just to confirm that this particular data require reduction of the rows, which is the row granularity. Now that we have confirmed that, So just to explain with comment, what we actually need is not this. So let me put that. What, or let me say, that is not what we, that is not what we want. That is not what we wanted. That is not what we wanted. What we wanted is that we wanted to represent one customer. Sorry, one student, because we're dealing with students. One student is
I'm with you.
okay. Thank you. Okay, so like I was saying, what we actually wanted is that we want one student, to represent my keyboard, to represent, we wanted to represent one student with one row. So each student should be represented in a row. So how do we now achieve that? That is the next, remember the question that says, apply the correct what? Data what? Okay, for us to achieve that, we are going to call out the, I think we are going to call out, for us to achieve this, we will call the data set name, the data set name, which is the entertain, then we are using the method, which is the pivot, because that is the techniques we are practicing right now. The pivot, which is one of the commonly used technique for row granularity. So we are using the pivot, and remember that if you are using the pivot, you have to define the header that will be used as criteria for reducing the row, which is the name. So I will say index, this is what we are using to reduce the number of rows. Index equals to name. Okay, so we need to also define the column, comma. Now remember what I told us the other time. If I want to break everything down, I will just wrap everything in parenthesis bracket. But let me just write it straight first. So command, I will now call columns. I will now call columns equals to column. Now the criteria for reducing them is the name. Then the behavior for reducing them, that's what they listen to, is the entertainment. Okay, so that is the header. You know, entertainment is, let's look at it here, the name for reducing. Then this is the songs they listen to, which is the behavior that we are capitalizing on. So to avoid typographical error, you can simply copy this one, because that is what you want to specify as your column. Okay, now we need to also show the value header, comma. So I'll bring in the values. Values header is the per hour, So I will just simply copy it to avoid typographical error. So it's also a string, so I will put it in a string. Now, once we have done that, if I run this, you have it here. So you can see from 600, you now have what? 150. From 600, you have 150. And then remember what I told us about row granularity. It is a machine learning techniques which is used to reduce the height of your data and increase the width. Initially, the height of the data, which was calculated by the number of rows, were 600, and the width was 3 columns when we ran the shape. But now you can see that the width has increased from 3 to 4, and then the rows, that is the height, has reduced from 600 to 150. That is exactly what this technique is about. It's about reducing the rows where you have unique identity, so they can be collapsed to one and summarize their value against. So here we have entertainment, we have books, we have movie, we have TV show, we have video game. All these things, they were under gen. All these, they were under entertainment, rather. They were under entertainment. But now they are now standing as headers now, broken against or summarize against the what? The names. Because that is what you said you want to achieve. Any question? Any question? Think it's clear?
No question.
Okay, so your assignment, if I may ask, did you do all this?
Yes, I did.
You did it?
We got the same thing.
Okay, good. That is what I actually want to. All right. So now, that means that we are done with row granularity. Now we look at what? Preparing column. Because under data preparation, you are not meant to prepare only the rows. You need to also prepare what? The column. So I will assume that we are done with rows preparation in case we are given data set where there is need to reduce the number of rows, where there are common identity data, you know how to do it. Now we are entering a new topic, which is still part of the data prep techniques. Now, what is the topic? The topic is preparing column. Preparing columns. All this while we have been preparing rows. So we want to for modeling. So why are you preparing the row? You prepare the row for modeling. Now you need to also prepare the column for modeling. So let me mark down. Make sure you are noting your step, please. So that mark down and then shift and enter twice. So now I have a note here that I'm going to explain. So after setting the row granularity, comma, you need to prepare your columns. So it's not just the rows you prepare for modeling. Now, this will involve several techniques. So number one, we are going to make sure that all values, so this is just like the task we are going to be performing here. All values should be none. All values should be none. Now, this is one categorical thing we are going to do here. Under this, Under this, what are the things we are going to be looking for? One, we will look for, we will identify missing, which also mean or null. So the word null also means what? Missing. Values. Using, just to prescribe the formula or the method we are going to use. Using the dots, info is part of what we have done before. So we are going to involve dot info. It's part of what you need to check for under column preparation. Then we are also going to, another thing we are going to achieve here or perform here, we are going to resolve them. So wherever we see missing value after the first one, we are also going to learn how to resolve them by either, so it's up to us, by either removing them. So we will decide then whether if we find missing value, we want to remove them, or we want to imputing new value. So it will be up to us imputing new values. So imputing new values is part of what we are going to do. Now, all these two items, they are part of what we are going to do under number one to ensure that what? There is no what? Missing value. Now, number two category thing we are going to do here. Number two, we are going to ensure that all values should be numeric. So we're going to learn some functions that can convert string to number and so on. Numeric. So how are we going to achieve this? Options under this. We are going to be learning how to convert field. We are going to be learning how to convert field from text data type to numeric data type. Going to be learning all that. This is the first option under number two. Then the second option is that we are going to be turning field from, we are going to be turning field into numeric field. Into numeric field using conditional logic, with conditional logic with dot np, or let's say with np, which represent number, dot this function called where is a function. So we are going to use it. So still another operation we are going to perform under ensuring that all values are numeric. We are also going to turn in categorical field using categorical field, into dummy variable, the what we call dummy variable, into numeric field using dummy variable. So these are what we are going to learn under preparing column for modeling, right? So now let's start taking them one after the other. Like I told you, you can just click here and press letter B to give you another cell. So what we want to do here we want to start with the first question. First question, which says, we want to start by identifying the missing values so that if you find them, you cannot check how you can replace them. So let me start with the first task, which is identifying missing data. So that is the first task we want to perform. Identify missing data. So here you can identify missing data. Let me just shorten it using the .info. So we're going to use .info. We're going to run .info on the data set to know if there are missing value. So here we are going to call in another data set. We are working with customer data set in this case. So I don't know if we have the customer here. Let's see. If we don't have it, we have to bring it. I think this one is what name did I use? Just want to be sure. Okay, I think is the Okay, so we have to call in another data set, which is the customer data set, where we have some missing value. We also have it, if you go to this, you have it in your file. I think I'll send it to you also. So we are bringing in this customer. So this is where we have some missing value so that we can implement all our techniques. So the first thing is, let me use comment, load the customer data. So loading it, I will just give you that same name, customers. I think it's customers. Then, of course, PD dot, it is a CSV file, so I will say read underscore CSV, read underscore CSV. Then I'll go back to my directory and call the parts of that data set, then put it here. Now, another way you can decide to use only the name instead of calling the entire URL. Remember that we need to put it in a string. Now, if I call it, let's see if it will accept it. Oh, such directory customer does not exist. So it's possible that it does not have customer does not exist. Okay, so what we do is let's copy the part and use the relative method. But in some cases, it will work. So if one method does not work for you, you switch to the other method. Okay, now let me use the relative. One of them should be able to work for me. Perfect, so this one works. So like I was saying, just type CU, which are the first two letters, and type double or first tab. Just press it, just one, to bring it out. So this is what you are looking for. So once I type it and run it, I have the data here. So you can see that this particular data has NaN, missing value. So I actually came up with this data in order, because if I come with a data set that does not have missing value, we'll be running all these techniques and we will not be getting results. So these are strategically constructed data sets for us to be able to deploy all the techniques with the assumption that you might be given a data set structured this way where you have this. So how do you attend to them? Okay, so the first question is for us to identify, the first task is to identify the what? The missing value. Now, to identify whether there are missing value, so we are going to use the .info, so which means that to check for missing values, to check for missing value, the syntax, to check for missing value, the syntax will be, the syntax will be the name of that data set, which is customer, the .info. So I run it. So you can see that this is giving us a summary of the information that makes up this data set. So from here, as a data scientist, as an expert, you should know whether there are missing value. The best way you will know when you run .info, check the counting of the column, the record under each of these columns. Under name, you have 8 records. Under age, you have 6. So you ask yourself, what happened? So which means that there are 2 cells missing what? Value. That's what it means. Under followers, you have 5, which also means that there are 3 cells there that does not have value. So when you run .info on a data set and focus on the non-null, which means where you count the number of record and also output where there is no missing value, you will definitely know if you have. So, but there are still other information .info can offer you, such as the type of data under each of the column, the number, the amount of space the entire data is occupying right now in Python memory, and then the headers that mix up the data set, everything, the total number of each column and entries, you will find out when you run .info. So that first task under category 1, data column preparation, has been sorted out. Do you have any question? Do you have question?
No question.
All right, so if there's no question, let's quickly look at the next task under column preparation, which is resolving them by either removing them or imputing value. So let me just copy that as the next task, because all these are issues under columns. The missing values are under columns. That is why we are talking about column preparation. So let me just paste them here. So for us to do this, we are going to use, we are going to find out how many of these places do we actually have the missing values. So we are going to add to resolve missing values, Now, to resolve these missing values, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to run that same customer. I'm going to run that same customer and do what? Isna. Isna is another Python function that check for missing value. So if I run Isna, you will notice that Isna will tell me where I have value as false, that there is value there, is not missing. That's the meaning. So any place you see true, it means that what? There is a missing value. So this is another way you can confirm. But there's a challenge I have with this method, because if the data set is much, it will wrap at some point. So you might not conclude that there's no missing value. That is the reason why we want to use a method that I mentioned somewhere there as .any. We are going to bring in .any. .any is part of what we must have verified. So what I'm going to do here is just to call out, that is to display only where we have missing value. So I want to know in the whole of this data set, output only the rows where there is a missing value under any of the column. So once, for example, now, if I run the command I'm about to run now, it will display this harmony. Why? Because harmony, there is a missing value under what? This particular column. There is another missing value. So it will just display only rows where at least in one column you have a missing value. So how do we achieve that? So let me use comment to display, because we need to find out before we start whether we want to remove them or we want to actually replace them with another number. To display only rows with missing values. So we are going to deploy, we are going to concatenate .any with the ISNA that help us to identify this. So what we are going to use, so using, so that you understand it, in case you are writing your note, using .isna function and .any function. So for you to be able to achieve this function is the one that will identify them. This one is the one that will bring them out. That is why you are concatenating both of them. All right, so what will actually be the syntax to achieve this? So the syntax is going to simply be calling the name of the customer, which is the name of your data. Then select, that is, you want to pick, you are not selecting all. You want to select only some. Select, you call that same customer again, tab, and pick it up from here. Then you concatenate the ISNA to do its work first. So the ISNA needs to be applied to identify them. Then you join the word .any as another function inside it. And now, because you are calling values along the rows, then you have to add inside this method as is equals to 1. So this as is equals to 1 is just to indicate that you are working with what? Row. So if I run this, check what happens. So it brings out only. So even if this data is up to 1 billion, and when you run is now, maybe there are some that you cannot view. So with this now, it will be able to what? To call only those one out, and then for you to confirm, because it is not good for you to assume that there's no missing value when you are working with a very large data set. So please, this is a compulsory function you must always run as part of checking whether there's a missing value or there are missing value in any data frame you are given, for you to ensure that the data you are working with is perfect. Okay, so now hope you understand that. Let me get a response from you. Is that clear?
Yes, I understand.
Okay, all right. So because we missed a class, that is why I'm trying to see if I can chip in a little, in as much you can go back and watch the video, so that we can cover that class that we missed a little. I was also have closed by now, but I just want to see if we can go for it. Let's avoid missing our class days, because other days has been scheduled. There's no day that I don't have class. So that's why I gave you your timetable. So once you miss your day, there's no way I can carve from another person's day. Because I want you to know that. That's why it was difficult for me when you requested for another day. It's not possible. Tomorrow now, yesterday I have another morning class. I have other people so that I don't disappoint people. So I have them fixed in certain days. Okay, so So now we have achieved one of those tasks that we outlined that is involved under what? The category 1 technique for you to model your columns. Now, if you go to category 2, which says all values should be numeric. All values should be numeric, but before we go to category 2, we have this to resolve. Now that we have identified we have missing value, let's implement this one, which means that we want to resolve them. We want to either delete them or we want to replace them with a different number. So if we want to delete them, before you delete, please, you are advised to save a copy of the raw data. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, before, let me use comment so to remind you, before deleting or replacing the missing values, the missing value, comma, save a copy. Save a copy. So how do I save a copy? I'm going to show you the formula, the function you use to do that. So the syntax, my keyboard is, the syntax is, you simply call a different data set. Now, the other one is saved with customers. There is S. So I will say customer, or I can just say customer 2. So, but this one is different from the other one. The other one have S. This one that we are using have S. This one does not have S. So if there's a better way you can differentiate them, you adopt it. Maybe customer 2. Then it means that this is a different data frame. So you are calling customer. From here, you will just simply add the dot copy. You just say dot copy is a function that is used to copy the data. So which means I will copy what is here and store it here automatically. That is what you are simply saying. So if I run it now, name customer is not defined. So let's check, okay, it's customers, not customer. So saved. So if I run the customer now, see you, tab, so the one with, now you have to be mindful of the one you are selecting. Now you have customer, just know that it's S that is differentiating them. So this is one I want to call. So if I call it, I have this one saved in this. Now, the reason is that in the course of your analysis, there might be need of you calling the raw data after you have tampered with it. So that you don't lose the entire data. That is why you save a copy of the raw one and they use the other copy to be running your script. So that is what we simply did here now. So we have saved a copy of it and we have checked for missing value. Now we confirm when we run this that actually there are places where they are missing value. So how to replace? So now to resolve the missing what? Values. Using dots. In this case, we are replacing them. We are not deleting. Using filler. The reason why I don't want to delete is that for the fact that you have missing value here, if you delete the whole of this value might be important in the analysis. The language Python might need this value to have a kind of precise prediction. So you don't delete since you know that it's a missing value. But adibin you want to delete, I will tell you what to do. I'm going to show you because there are scenarios where you'll be asked to delete. There are scenarios where you'll be asked to replace. So I'm going to show you, the first one is I'm showing you how to replace, and then I'm also going to show you how to delete. What I'm saying is that professionally, you should not consider deleting because there are other values there that might be needed in your analysis. So let's quickly practice that first. If the case is to delete, what do I do? So I'm going to, if to replace. So I am going to simply call the data set, which is the course. So I'm using the customer, and then I'll say dot fill now. Fill now, and then supply the value. So all the places where we have the NaN, which represent missing values, should be represented or replaced with 0. So if I run this now, you can see that what all the places where I have the NaN, they are now represented with what this. Now, which means that to an extent, this is the one you should work with. So you can now come back and save and say final underscore data equals to this, so that it can be in a valid variable. So which means that subsequently, anytime you want to access the one that you have changed all the missing value to 0, you just call what? You will just call final, and then display the value. So that is settled. Now, if it is in the case of deleting, which is the last one I want to show us before we call it. Now, to delete all missing values using the dots. So what my interest is exposing it to this function. That is what we are actually doing. So in the course of doing all this, there are several functions we must have been exposed to, which you should know as a data scientist. Now, drop means to delete. Drop means to delete. So which means that if I want to delete all the places, so you can see the essence of saving as raw now, because I did not copy. Now that I have already changed all this to 0, which one will I work with now that I want to perform what? This. So now I have to use this very one. I have to still, okay, I still have my customer in this case because I've saved the final one. So if I call cost now, just to find out if I'm still having a missing value there. Yes, I'm still having missing value. So let me use this to perform the deleting. So the syntax is going to simply be, so the syntax will be, you call the name of that same data set, okay? So just for you to understand what this function is, the drop now method removes rows or column with missing data. That is what we are doing. And then the fill now method impute missing data. So now the syntax for this is to simply call the data set. Let's say this, and then concatenate the drop. Now, that is all. You are not putting anything inside because you are removing. So it is the function that will scan through the data and detect wherever you have any error which is missing value and delete it. Now, you can delete this based on the row, and you can also delete it based on the column. So if the criteria is you are deleting, that is going to be tracing them row by row, where it's find missing number and delete it, then you use this. So this one is deleting NaN by row. So let me just say by row. So the criteria for deleting now is by rows. So we are still going to do for column. So if I run this now, check what happened. It starts remove all the rows where you have NaN. Now you have only left rows where from the beginning to the end, there is no place with missing value. Now, this is for row, like I said, this is for row. Now, if I want to delete, as the last topic for this section, to delete missing values based on column. I will show you what I mean by based on column. Based on column means if I call in the customer, remember that if I want to use this as a different data set, then I will have to come here and say, okay, maybe final final2 equals to, and save it in a valid data set, so that whenever I need it, I will just say what? Final2. So it is professional that once you derive an important information that you might use in the course of the analysis, you quickly what? Store it somewhere. Because if you don't store it that time, it will be it just there as display result, which you cannot reaccess for valid analysis. So now I want to call in the customer. So I'm still retaining the main data, customer. Now here, when I say deleting by column, what it's going to do is that it will check this column name. If there is no missing value under it, it will retain it. It will check the age. It will delete the age column. The whole of age column and its value will go, because there are two places where we have missing value. It will check followers. It will delete the whole of followers, because there are two places where you have that. It will check through income. There's no missing value, to retain it. To check through sign update, there's no missing value, it will retain it. To check through discount, there's no missing value, it will retain it. To also check through educational level, there is no missing value, it will what? Retain it. So that is exactly the syntax I want to show us here now, using what? This. So if you are using this syntax, it's the same function that you use here, this very one here. But let me show you where you will change. You will have to add as is equals to 1. That is the only thing that will be different. The other one, you left it what? Empty. So you say as is equals to 1. So if you want to delete missing value based on column, then you add this. Based on row, you leave it empty. So if I run this code now, watch out what will happen. You can see that what? Followers and age has been what? Deleted from this data, which means there are missing value under them. So this is where we draw the curtain. And I want to believe you have learned something.
Yes, sir.
All right, so your assignment is to practice, because our next topic we shall be looking at. Our next topic, we are still on it. We still have a lot of things. Remember, I said under column preparation. Let me go back to where we started. Under column preparation, we highlighted what and what we should engage in. We have implemented all the ones under category 1, identify missing value, making sure that there's no missing value. Resolving, that is one we just did now. We have either replaced them or we have deleted based on column and row. Then our next class, we will continue with what? All values should be what? Numeric, where we shall be engaging in these 3 aspects. So let me just quickly copy it and put it there, just to help us to know our next topic. So we are still under column preparation, but we are here to consider other operations that are involved. So we shall be starting from here in our next class. Let me mark it down, and then, all right, so thank you. So let's keep to our time. That should be Monday,
Okay,
right?
sir.
That should be Monday, right?
No problem. You can help me send the recording, right?
Yes, I will, definitely.
Okay, no problem. Right now.
All right.